Welcome to the Endo Belly Girl Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Chavez. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and restorative wellness practitioner on a mission to change the way that we support women with endometriosis. Endo is a full-body disease that impacts your mind, body, and spirit in countless ways that aren't often addressed the way that women truly deserve. We are here to talk about all of it. Please keep in mind that the content of this show has been created for educational purposes only and should never be used as a replacement for medical diagnosis or treatment. Hey, my friend, and welcome back to the Endo Belly Girl Podcast. I absolutely cannot believe it because I am hitting record on this today and realizing that this episode is episode 50. And that means that I've been doing this podcast for just shy of a year. I actually started at end of September last year, but I aired 3 episodes on day 1. So that's why we're hitting episode 50 a few weeks or so early here. But I think that's pretty awesome. And so to celebrate, I have sort of a special episode in mind for you. It's a little bit different format than some of the typical episodes you're used to hearing, but I hope that it will be super helpful for you as well. I thought it would be a great little thing to throw in for episode 50. So, hi and welcome to the show here. I'm Alyssa. In case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet or you're new to the podcast, I am a functional nutritionist who specializes in endometriosis. I work with clients virtually one-on-one and through my membership, the Endo Warrior Circle. And I absolutely love what I do and decided to bring it to the world also in the form of this podcast that I hope you enjoy listening to. Now today, what we're going to do, I said this was going to be a little bit different format, and it is. This podcast, my friend, has been such a labor of love. I really have enjoyed doing this. I'm so happy to share it with all of you. It's been such a pleasure creating these last 49 episodes and so many more to come. I have no plans of stopping this podcast anytime soon. I'm going to keep it rolling. In fact, I have more plans to grow it and do more awesome things in the months and years to come. So I can't wait to share that with you. And I also wanted to take a moment to just say a huge thank you for being here. Everybody who's listened, whether you've listened to one episode or all of them, if you have at any point in time left a rating or a review for the show, if you have reached out to me in any way to let me know that you enjoyed the podcast or it helped you in some way, this is what keeps me going and makes me want to continue to create these podcast episodes for you. So thank you. And as a thank you, I'm doing this special episode. So I wanted to share today a little bit about my personal journey with endometriosis because I started off in a place probably similar to where many of you are now if you're listening to this, but I'm now in a place of actually feeling really pretty good in my body. Like I don't think about the fact that I have endometriosis a whole lot anymore, which is pretty cool. Other than the fact that I do what I do because I work with women with endometriosis all the time and I create this podcast and all the other content for this business. But as far as just me personally in my body, it's just not a huge thing anymore, which is amazing because I never thought that would be me. I really thought that having endometriosis was going to be like a life sentence and was just going to leave me, feeling yucky until menopause, which is still a little ways away, I hope. And really the biggest thing for me, I think that I have found to be really life-changing in so many ways is that I no longer fear being on my period. I used to have to miss work for 2 or 3 days every single cycle. I would be canceling plans. I would find myself constantly checking the calendar to see when I would be on my period. And that's just not really a fun way to live. But nowadays, my periods are really pretty easy. Like I actually sometimes forget that I'm on my period. I'll have to be like, oh, I should change out my feminine products because it's sometimes I just am not even thinking about the fact that I'm on my period, which is pretty cool because it used to be very, very hard to ignore. Nowadays, I'll maybe have one day of discomfort. I wouldn't even quite call it pain. Even my husband has been pretty blown away by that. It's been really an incredible transformation. And so what I wanted to do for today's episode as a thank you for being here for episode 50 is to walk you through how I got to where I am today. So I want to just kind of take you back to the beginning of my journey. It was kind of fun for me reflecting on all of this, just to see where I started and where I've gone and kind of reflect back along that journey and what all I've done along the way. And I hope that will be helpful for you on your journey as well. Now, I really wish that this were as easy as, hey, just try this one thing and all your problems will be solved. Because I think I was hoping that for a long time, where it was, okay, if I just take this one supplement, this is all I need. This is the one thing that I need. And then I'm going to feel better. And what I really learned through all of this, probably my biggest takeaway, is that it's never just one thing. Right? Getting to a place of good health, getting to a place of feeling the way that I feel today, it was definitely not an overnight process. And it involved a lot of things along the way, which I'm going to unpack for all of you today. So let's turn the clock back. We're going to start this journey together back in 2016. Now, I want to reverse even before that and say that I did have endo symptoms starting back in my late teen years, but I didn't know what endo was at the time, had never heard of it, didn't even understand that having period pain isn't a normal thing to have. And so I did the typical thing where I just went on birth control when I was 20 years old and was on that for about 7 years until where we're going to start in the journey today. And I didn't really have a lot of symptoms during that time. So I'm not going to dive deep into that region. I think I've talked about that some in some previous episodes, but I don't believe I've unpacked my story quite the way that I'm going to today. So let's take a look at that. So starting in 2016, in November of that year, so the end of 2016, I went off of birth control because I was going to be getting married the following year. So my husband and I were already engaged. We'd been together by that point in time for 7 years already. We had kind of a long relationship before we even got engaged. So we were pretty ready to just dive in and start a family as soon as we got married. And our wedding was in July of 2017. So I went off birth control early, really just because I thought my body might need a little time to adjust. Turns out it needed a lot of time to adjust. The things we know now. And also, I just had run out of birth control, to be perfectly honest. My prescription had run out in November of 2016, and I just kind of didn't refresh it because I figured that was kind of silly. So that's really where my journey started, because when I went off birth control, I would have been, 27 years old, I believe, at that time. And I started having really intense period pain shortly after that. So I went off birth control. I don't remember if it was right away or maybe there were a few months in there while my body was kind of adjusting, but I started having that really intense period pain to the point where I wasn't really able to function. I remember getting in the car one day after work and just sitting there crying and trying to call the doctor's office and figure out what in the world was going on. I just knew something wasn't right. And I started having acne breakouts, digestive issues, all this stuff. And the pain has always been my biggest symptom. I mean, the digestive stuff was definitely a thing, and I'll dig more into that in a little bit too. But the pain was really the big thing for me. I mean, I was to the point where when I was really in that intense pain, I actually couldn't stand up. Physically, I couldn't stand up. I couldn't straighten out my body. I would have to walk around kind of hunched over with my hands on my knees if I was even able to walk around. If I wanted to go up the stairs of my house, I had to kind of crawl up there. I mean, it was just very painful. And there were a lot of tears involved. God bless my husband for being the man that he is, because he has been an amazing support through all of that, even though I'm sure that was challenging for him. And I was also in a position where nothing helped. I mean, I could take pain medication. I would use my heating pad. I even would listen to frequencies that I would just find these frequencies on YouTube that were like supposed to be pain relieving, healing frequencies. And I would put that on. Breathing. I mean, I would do all the things, and it just seemed like nothing really quite took the pain away. It was just very intense. And so that was kind of my experience through that time. In July 2017, we got married, started trying to have a family right away. We weren't having luck with that. So that was really the reason I went to see a doctor initially. Even though I was having these really intense period pain, I never actually ended up going to see a doctor until much, much, much later. Because even before that, clearly I'm not somebody who just runs to the doctor for every little thing, because the first thing that I did when we were struggling with fertility was to go to an acupuncturist. And I really enjoyed that, actually. That was a wonderful experience. It's definitely something that I recommend to people. It can be super supportive for endometriosis. Didn't actually know I had endometriosis at the time when I started working with her anyway, but I did see some improvements in my cycles because I was having just really long cycles too. I would have like 40 plus day long cycles along with having the period pain and everything else going on. So I was seeing some improvements in all of that, but came around to fall 2018. So this is a little over a year after we got married. And we finally went in to see a fertility specialist. And through that consultation, that was the first time that endometriosis was mentioned to me. She had done a pelvic ultrasound and said, hey, it looks like there could be possibly an endometrioma on your ovary. At the time, it was quite small. And anyway, we had a couple of sessions. We did a little bit of testing. And I just kind of decided, or my husband and I decided, we just weren't really quite ready to go down that road yet. So we decided to take a step back and just kind of continue doing what we were doing. And then a year went by, still nothing. So we went back in fall of 2019, went back to that same fertility specialist, did a whole lot of testing then at that time. And by that point, a year had gone by and that endometrioma on my ovary had grown quite a bit. So now it was very obvious on the ultrasound. So initially, you could kind of see it. It looked like just a small little thing, but after that year, it had grown quite a bit to where it looked, to me, I always said it looked like a big black hole on the ultrasound. That's the impression that I got from it. And so in 2020, early 2020, we ended up going in to do IVF. We ended up doing 2 rounds. You may recall that a lot happened in 2020. Wherever you are in the world, you probably are aware of that. It was hard to miss the events of 2020. That was the year that we decided to start IVF. We started in January, so at the time everything was normal and fine. But by the time it was time to do our transfer, which was initially scheduled for, I think, April of 2020, that all ended up getting pushed back. We didn't even do a transfer until June. Did another one in September. First one failed. Second one ended in a miscarriage. In the midst of that, was doing a whole lot of medications. I was on Lupron, which is a complete hormone blocking medication. It basically blocks all of your estrogen. I felt terrible. It was like going through menopause. I had hot flashes and everything. I was on birth control on and off. I was on all the hormone meds for the egg retrieval and transfer and everything. There was just a lot on my body, and I was left feeling quite worse than I did before, to be honest. I needed a break from all of that, both physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things. So I took a step back from all of it, kind of just brushed my hands off and walked away. And I decided at that point in time that I wanted to better understand how to support my body, because I was kind of just listening to the doctor and doing what she said because she's the doctor and she knows. But I remember at one point in time asking her about diet and even supplements and things, and she didn't really give me much of an answer other than, whatever you think might help. And I didn't know much about this stuff at the time, but I did feel like there was more to know than what I had learned in my doctor's office, which was nothing. So I'd started just doing some research. Went on good old Dr. Google and started doing some looking around and researching and figuring out what I could do to help to support my body dietarily. And I did find quite a bit of information out there, actually. There were some helpful resources. There's definitely actually quite a bit of research on PubMed. There's a lot that you can find on that topic. And so I started just making some dietary changes on my own at first. Very first thing that I did is cut out gluten. I was reading about the connection between gluten and endometriosis and inflammation and all the things. And even though I had eaten it just fine my whole life, I said, you know what? It's worth a try. Why don't I just go gluten-free for 30 days and see what happens? And what happened was I didn't have as much pain in the next period. It wasn't gone by any means. It wasn't like a complete night and day sort of transformation, but it did help. And so that kind of piqued my interest and made me want to learn more. What else can I do? How else can I help to support my body? And so the next couple of months or so, I started making some more changes. I cut out dairy as well, in part because I actually already kind of knew I had an issue with dairy. I've had a dairy intolerance really since I was a kid, and I kind of was not listening to my body super well in my earlier adulthood and thought I was fine eating it. Turns out I really wasn't. My body was kind of inflamed and not loving that. So I went completely gluten and dairy free. I started adding in more vegetables, cutting out the processed foods, just trying to make some better choices for my body. And I started seeing a difference. I really genuinely started to feel better, and I thought that was awesome. And I needed to learn more because that's just my personality. So after doing this really for a relatively short time, I think I'd been working on my own diet and health for maybe a few months. And then I started researching different programs where I could learn more about this and hopefully bring this information to more people, which is where we are today on episode 50 here. So I enrolled in the Nutritional Therapy Association, which is a wonderful program. It was absolutely a great starting point for me on this journey where I learned a ton about diet, nutrition, lifestyle, and introduction to supplements. Learned so much along the way, and I used myself, of course, as a guinea pig with everything that I was learning. And I really started to put the pieces together and understand and recognize the impact that food and nutrients actually had on my body and how much all of this could actually impact what I was experiencing, which is pretty cool. But me being the personality that I have, it also left me wanting to learn more. And I still wasn't quite pain-free, right? Things had improved. My pain was starting to improve during my periods. I noticed that I was starting to get a little more energy. Little changes were happening in there. But I also felt like I was missing something. I needed to learn more. And I started learning a little bit about gut health and how digestion and the health of your microbiome can really impact your body. And so I decided I really needed to learn more about that as well and kind of add to my education and my understanding of the body and how everything works. So I took a deep dive. I ended up going back to get further education. This has kind of been an ongoing journey for me. I feel like I'm just continuing education indefinitely, basically at this point. And that was really my first introduction to functional testing when I was introduced to the GI map, which is a stool test. It's something that I now use super regularly in my practice. I ended up uncovering parasites in my body. I had dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in your gut bacteria. So I had too many of the not so good gut bugs. I had not enough of the good, am I saying that wrong? I had too many of the bad gut bugs, not enough of the good gut bugs in my body. I also had an overgrowth of H. pylori, which is a type of bacteria that lives in your stomach but shouldn't. I also showed a reaction to gluten, even though I wasn't eating any at the time, which it really shouldn't show up as positive if you're not eating it. So that was interesting information for me too. I had low immune function. I had low enzymes, probably amongst other things. I don't even know if that fully covers it, but that was the gist of it. And I did a lot of healing work for all of this. So I did some eradication work for some of the bacteria and parasites and things that I didn't want in my body. I did a lot of supporting the digestive process, so supporting my digestive juices and enzymes and all the things to make sure that I was really able to break down food well. I did some healing and sealing of my gut lining. I did some rebuilding of my microbiome, mostly through diet and some supplements and things like that, just feeding those good gut bugs. I was definitely making some more dietary changes through that process too. I was really being aware of sugar intake, which is something that had previously definitely been a challenge for me. I definitely was kind of a sugar addict. I started to increase my dietary fiber that I was taking in, more veggies, getting in more colors of veggies, all the things. And it made a huge difference for me. Really, it was a game changer. This made more, to this day, that the gut work that I did has made more impact on my body than anything else that I've done. Not to say it's the only thing. It's not the one thing, the one change that will rule them all. But it was super helpful. I find that to be super helpful for a lot of my one-on-one clients as well, because how many of us with endo also have gut stuff going on? I mean, it's super common. So doing that work was super helpful. And I did also, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I had a lot of digestive issues, which again, I'm not sure that I really realized how many digestive issues that I had until they were gone. Because I had bloating. I was having a lot of bowel issues too. First of all, I had just had really loose stools all the time. My stool was never fully formed. It always looked kind of loose, not quite diarrhea, but definitely not solid. I always had a little bit of pain with bowel movements and a lot of pain with bowel movements while I was on my period. And I was going to the bathroom a lot. Like, it's normal to have 1 to 2 bowel movements per day. I was having like 10. That was my morning every day. I would go to the bathroom and then I would go sit on the couch and do my thing. And then half an hour later, I'd be back in the bathroom again and then go sit down. And then 10 minutes later, I'm back in the bathroom again. And that was like the first few hours of my day every day. And I find it interesting now that I didn't think something was up with that at the time. I mean, what? Yeah, something was off in there. So throughout doing all of this gut healing work, it improved a ton. My digestive issues were gone. All of a sudden, I was having normal bowel movements. And I didn't even talk about food reactions. I'd been having just a lot of random little food sensitivities. Those really resolved through that process as well. So I was able to eat more foods at the end of the day. And what else? The bloating was gone. I mean, so many things improved. It was pretty nuts. And my pain improved a lot too when I, finished this gut healing work, and then my periods all of a sudden were quite a bit better. My fatigue improved. I mean, there were a lot of things that really started to improve along that way. The one thing that I found to be still lingering, even after doing a lot of that gut healing work, and some other things that I was implementing around that time as well, because I was also studying hormones and how to balance the hormones naturally and some other things as well. And I was implementing all that stuff and I was seeing so much improvement, but I was finding that I was having a lot of pain around my right ovary where I had that large endometrioma. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to look into doing this surgery. I know that there are stories and things about people being able to completely, get rid of things without needing surgery. But I just feel like at this point in time, it's the right thing for me. I've come a long way, but I feel like with the size of that endometrium is quite large. It ended up being about 9 centimeters when they removed it. It was quite large and I just wanted it out of my body. I wanted kind of a reset. So I decided to go ahead and proceed with endometriosis excision surgery, which I did in August of 2022, right about 2 years ago now at the time that I'm recording this. And I'm so glad I did. And so they removed the endometrioma. They also removed endometriosis kind of all over in my body and unstuck organs from each other, things that probably wouldn't have just happened magically on their own, even with everything else that I was doing. So I felt like it gave me a nice reset. So I'd come a really long way with everything that I was doing. I'd seen a lot of improvement, but I did just feel like I needed that diseased tissue to be removed from my body, and I'm really happy that I did it, even though it was quite an ordeal and quite a recovery and all of that. But I still wasn't quite pain-free, even after all of that. I was mostly pain-free, mind you. My pain had improved a lot even before the surgery. Really, the lingering pain was just around the site of that endometrioma. And after having that removed, that got a lot better. The first couple of cycles were definitely a little rough, which is normal after having that surgery, but it started to get better after that. However, I still noticed some lingering symptoms. I was still having some pain with bowel movements during my periods. I was still having those loose stools, the period poops during my periods, which were just painful and uncomfortable, and some bloating. And my biggest issue, this actually didn't come up until after my surgery. I had never had this before, but started to have it pretty much right after my surgery, where I would start getting nausea and vomiting during my periods. And that wasn't very fun, because then even when I wasn't in a lot of pain, I would be nauseous and vomiting, so I wouldn't be able to function and go to work anyway, which is frustrating. So I decided at that point in time, so I am a functional nutritionist myself, and I work one-on-one with clients, but I started to realize that working with other people is very different than working with yourself. It's different working with yourself because it's harder to have patience with things. It's harder to kind of see things objectively, because how do you not have emotions and personal connection involved? How do you not? It's you. It's your body. So I made a decision to go ahead and start working with a fellow functional nutritionist. So she actually has the same training that I do. She works a very similar way. And honestly, that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted somebody who understands the way that I'm thinking, the way that I'm working, and, has kind of similar tools in her tool belt, but just isn't me. And so I actually hired a nutritionist of my own to work with, and I spent 6 months working with her, just kind of to get a second set of eyes, somebody to talk through things with and help me to, feel better at the end of it, which I did. So during that time, we did various things. We worked on supporting certain nutrient levels. We did some blood work. I was low in vitamin D, for example, and magnesium. So we started supporting some of that stuff. We did some support for my immune system to help to continue to, keep things happy in that realm. We actually did some homeopathy as well. That's something that she was familiar with to help to support digestion and microbiome balance, to kind of take a, little bit gentler approach on the gut. We did some anti-inflammatory supports. We worked on some hormone balancing, especially supporting progesterone levels and estrogen detoxification. And through all of that, I now no longer have the nausea or the vomiting. That's gone. And I no longer have any pain either. It seemed like for a while it was one or the other. I was either going to be in pain or I was going to be nauseous. And I've managed now to have neither, which is awesome. So my experience now is that I'm able to go to work. I mostly, work from home, but go upstairs to work. You know what I mean? I'm able to function. I'm able to live my life while I'm on my periods. I've traveled while I've been on my period lately. I have had some, busier weekends with a lot going on and been fine. And that's been so life-changing. So I'm so thankful to where I've gotten. And now, moving forward, I'm not doing any major protocols or anything right now. What I'm doing now is really just working on maintaining and continuing to create healthy habits for myself, because the work is never done, right? It's not like I can just lay back and enjoy now, because I feel like now I need to maintain and continue this work that I've done so that I can continue to feel good and not kind of fall back into old habits. So right now, what I'm working on is doing a lot of mindfulness and mindset work. And this has been happening along the way. This is not something that I'm just now adding in. This has been a part of my life for years. but it's huge and it's something that I'm continuing to work on every single day. So that includes incorporating things like meditation and breath work. I do a lot of just also listening to podcasts and audiobooks and reading books along those lines that are just really supportive from a mental and spiritual level. And I find that to be super helpful as well along this journey, right? It's not all physical. We think of endometriosis being a very physical condition, but honestly, there's a lot of it is that mental, emotional work too. There's so much to that. I know a lot of endo warriors will do things like go see a therapist or do energy work and things like that because there's just a lot. There's a lot of trauma involved, right? Especially when you've experienced a lot of pain, you've gone through fertility stuff, you've gone through major surgeries. I mean, all of that can be a trauma on your body. And so honoring that and continuing to support the nervous system and all is super important. I'm also a huge yoga person. I've done yoga for like the past 15 plus years of my life. I teach yoga as well. I only actually teach one yoga class a week live in person at a local yoga studio just because I really love it and enjoy it. I've taught that same class for many years now and just enjoy doing that. I've also now incorporated yoga into the Endo Warrior Circle, which is the membership that I run for Endo Warriors, because I figured it's a good thing for Endo Warriors too. And there's some meditation and breath work and stuff too. I kind of incorporate all of that. And of course, I'm always thinking about diet and nutrition. Now, I'm not perfect about it. Like even at the time that I'm recording this, I had just come back from a camping trip with my husband and my family, and we were in this little mountain town outside of San Diego, which is famous for their pie. They grow apples up there. There's some apple orchards and stuff, but they are really known for their apple pie. And so, of course, we had to get some pie while we were up there. There is one store that has gluten-free pie, so I do still stick very strictly to the gluten-free thing. That's going to be a forever way of eating for me. But I can promise you that pie was full of sugar and, probably butter and some other things that I would prefer not to know about. But you know what? We were on vacation. We were having fun. And having a slice of pie ain't going to kill me. So I do things like that. But mostly I'm really good about, I cook dinner most nights. I do a lot of veggies. I tend to follow a largely paleo diet, although not perfectly within that realm. I don't really like to put labels on the diet that I follow because I don't like labels. But that's kind of the general framework that I follow. I focus mostly on proteins and vegetables and things like that. Try to keep the blood sugar stable. Try to make sure I'm getting plenty of nutrients and antioxidants into my body because that's really important and it helps keep me feeling really good. And I also try to follow habits like keeping a sleep schedule. I am very regimented with my sleep schedule. And good luck trying to throw me off of that because I will just probably fall asleep on you anyway if you try to keep me up too late. I'm pretty much going to bed by like 10 o'clock every night. I'm usually up around 6, and that's my schedule pretty much every day unless something weird happens in there. I also am very aware of my movement. I go on walks pretty much every day. I do have 2 dogs, so they kind of hold me responsible for that anyway. Like I said, I like to do yoga. I do work on the computer a lot these days. I do Zoom calls and things and, just working on the back end on my computer. So I do make myself get up and take some movement breaks, which I'm about to do right after recording this episode. I also try to make sure that I'm getting in fresh air and sunshine and even enjoying some like well-deserved and scheduled rest time where I'm actually not doing stuff. I think that that's really important too. So those are some of those little daily habits that I follow. I do still take supplements too. I don't take as many as I once did. Like when I was going through the gut healing stuff, it kind of involves a lot of supplements because you're doing eradication and digestive supports and all the things. I don't do all of that anymore because it's just not necessary, and I don't take like 25 supplements a day. I tend to keep it to somewhat of a minimum now, and just I tend to kind of rotate through things. But I have some foundational stuff, like I'm taking a good quality multivitamin at this point in time that kind of covers my basis as far as a lot of the things that I was kind of doing separately before. I do a good quality omega-3 as well as evening primrose oil. Those are things that I take daily, magnesium. So I have my things that I am taking to help to support my body. And then I'm just really focusing on trying to love my body into health, right? Trying to appreciate my body. I still continue my habit of saying a little moment of gratitude for my body when I'm getting ready for bed. And I really am so happy with where I am now with my health. I know that my health will only continue to improve. I can feel myself getting better on a day-to-day basis, and I'm thankful for that. I really love this work that I do. I am so thankful that I am able to bring this information to the world and work with people and hopefully create a positive ripple effect for endo warriors. I love that I get to help other people get to where I am each and every day. I find that so incredibly rewarding. So if you're interested in all of this, if you want to know more about what I do and how I can help people, I'd love to chat with you. I actually offer a free consultation. If you're interested in that, I have a few spots available at the moment for those free consults. You can book in a time for 30 minutes with me, and we can talk a little bit about your journey and what's been going on with you, and if working in functional nutrition is something that can help to support your body. So I hope to see you in there and get to know you a little bit. And I'll be back for more for episode 51. Now we're on our way to 100. Can't wait. All right. Thanks for joining me today, my friend. Much love. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. If you loved what you heard, be sure to share with a friend and subscribe so that you can keep coming back for more. If you are ready to take the next step towards getting to the root cause of your endo symptoms like endo belly, pain, fatigue, and so much more, you need to download my free ultimate guide to building your own endometriosis diet. You can find the link in the show notes or at www.endobellygirl.com. Until next time, my friend.